finger reading, which is Braille. And in one of the books that we have for sale tonight, that Taylor Books has for us, is called the Dyslexia Empowerment Plan. And it talks about the 3 types of reading and how all of them, the goal is the same. And Emma, I'm so glad you said that. I set you up for it, but you did it to say ear reading. And I'm really proud. And a lot of my students who are here know what ear reading is and know that that's just as valid as any other form of learning. So that was great. For any teachers who might be in the audience, is there anything that you would like for them to hear as a dyslexic student? Think about that.
One thing that I want to say to any teachers that are dealing with dyslexic children, don't give up on them. They do have potential and they can learn, but just not the same ways as everybody. And they can reach a full capacity, but in an entirely different way than the average student.
Excellent. That was excellent. And before you sit down, can I just say one thing about a classic sign of dyslexia that you display? Listen to that vocabulary. Beautiful. Advanced for her age. And yet, when Emma goes to write things, she doesn't always write it in that same way because it's trickier for her. And so for those of you who are wondering if you're working, if you have a dyslexic child in your family or a dyslexic child in your classroom, that's one of the classic signs, is this incredible vocabulary, and then maybe not quite so much on paper. When I first met Emma a couple years ago, that was classic. She was telling me how she loves the mountains and to go outside and experience nature and beauty. And I said, would you write this down? And she wrote, I like to go out. Okay. And now her writing has progressed to be much more elegant and eloquent, but still it's that disconnect between the oral language and the written.
And I mean, when I was little, I used to speak better than the other children in my group, but when I sat down to write or read, I would always avoid it. And if there was a word that I didn't know, my brain would switch it to a word that I did know and keep reading. Right. And my mom finally just had to tell my teacher, make sure that she reads. Because whenever I had to sit down and read, like we had the option to read or to do something else. And I would never choose to read.
And I wanted to also compliment Emma's mom in recognizing that she was in a school that was not recognizing Emma's potential. And Emma wasn't a particularly happy kid when I first met her academically, and I want to also give a shout out to the Montessori environment in terms that is so accommodating and so understanding of dyslexic students, and now Emma can shine. So I think that's really important for schools to know that you can create an environment where children can shine. Anything else you want to say? No? Okay, well maybe people have questions later after Fletcher talks. You can answer if anybody wants to ask you. Okay. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Okay, Fletcher, can you think of anything that you might want to tell other teachers who are here tonight about being dyslexic?
They might not be good at language. They might not be good at geography, but they are very intelligent and brilliant of other stuff like math. They're pretty good with that, but they might not accomplish language or math. I mean, they will, but probably not language.
Right.
And so not all Montessori's would work. You have to find one thing, one Montessori that will always work. People would say mean stuff about it. I'll get made fun of.
Do you feel like now in the classroom that you're in that people understand dyslexia more so than you have in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in your school, do you hear people using the word dyslexia a lot?
No.
No? Okay, well that's a really good thing to talk about, because the more we say dyslexia, the more other people realize, oh yeah, dyslexia, it's just a thing, it's just like who you are. And in the film, Dylan said, just own it. Just own it. And the more we use the language, and I'm sorry the one parent left, he had to leave, but when we first did the intake appointment at the Reading Center, we used the term, and his son was a couple years ago, we didn't use the word dyslexia as much as we used to now, or as much as we do now. We would just say it was a language processing problem, the way to process text, different things like that, but it really is dyslexia, so we use it and own it a lot now. And so I think that's really important that you bring that point up, Fletcher. That's something that we all need to work on, is to use the word dyslexia and then own it. Anything else you want to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, at my old school also, well, one time my teacher made me sit down, and when I tried to read a book, I couldn't read like any word, and he would kept correcting me. And then I kept trying and trying, but I couldn't do it. And I just wanted him to know that only the people that know how to do it should only help me with reading, and the people at school should only help me with like math, and my mom and my other really supportive people that help me should only really do that language and stuff.
That's great. So you know which kind of people know how to help you. Right. That's a really good message for teachers to hear.
And then my teachers try to do it when they don't know the real way. That's the best that I know how to do my method.
Yeah, your method. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you, Fletcher, very much. Thinking that's really valuable once you get out of school. And so when you're in school, so many people don't understand what to look for, and then our creative students don't get to shine like the kids we heard here tonight. I do want to draw your attention to a couple of books. Like I said, Taylor's books has, the one is the Dyslexia Empowerment Plan, and that's written by Ben Foss. And I'd say it's pretty radical. It's absolutely excellent, though. And it's very different than Overcoming Dyslexia, which we also have for sale, which was by Sally Shaywitz, and she is considered the topmost researcher in the dyslexia field in the United States, actually in the world right now. And so she has this center at Yale University, and she wrote a book called Overcoming Dyslexia that's available at the counter if you're interested in that. And it's much more brain research based. It has lots of different pictures that show the MRIs in a hospital type setting that show the different parts of the brain that are functioning very differently that we can see on an MRI. And she goes through all of the research. I really like that she named something, dyslexia is an island of weakness. Language, like Fletcher said so eloquently, language is a weakness, but they're surrounded by a sea of strengths. So we call that the sea of strengths model. And so if you could be thinking about that in terms of dyslexia, look for the sea of strengths that your child has and not the difficulties only, and focus constantly on the difficulties that they're having in school. And then the Ben Foss book is kind of different. Like I said, radical. He's the one that that came up with the terms of eye reading, ear reading, and finger reading. And he really embraces learning to eye read the best you can. Spend 2 to 4 years and eye read as best you can. Then after that, abandon it altogether and go for technology and do speech-to-text software, all audiobooks, all of those kinds of things. So it's a little bit radical, but I think the 2 different kinds of books are great things to look at in terms of, he says there's never been a greater time to be dyslexic. He's dyslexic himself and talks about the technology is finally kind of catching up to where dyslexic brains are already racing, and now the technology is catching up to it. So it's both of those are really good books to read. We also have a paper from Learning Ally. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight Dyslexia. And so if you're a teacher or a parent and you would like to try to get that into the hands of somebody at your school, it talks for teachers about what to look for in your classroom and what to do. Or for me? In the back, the gentleman has a question.
About, is there like a place, because we got a college student, and we were, man, he probably has dyslexia, and we just want, is there testing or some place you go to get them tested or something?
Yeah, at the Appalachian Reading Center, we do a screening for dyslexia where we do about an hour of different things, and I can talk about it after if you want, and I also have a checklist for dyslexia that I have for everyone if you would like one after we finish up here. I have
my question relates to what he was saying.
Okay.
They talk about, my son was diagnosed with dyslexia in 3rd grade. He's now in 9th grade. He's now thinking about going to college. He's going to need to be retested again, I guess, in order to determine whether or not he can use accommodations in college. At what are there defined times that this needs to take place? And if so, do you do that also, or do I need to go to some established?
Yes, and you would probably need to go to a university or a psychologist. One of the things, and I will speak frankly, and I know there are probably some psychologists in here, sometimes we send people to psychologists and it's accurate. And sometimes the results that come back are completely wrong. And so it's very difficult to name a particular place in our area. I have one family that has a neuropsychologist that she's been using at Ohio State, and so, I'm sorry, at Ohio University. And so I have his name and phone number in my office if you want to call or.
At what time, is there a particular time that this has to happen?
Well, it's best to do it definitely as soon as you can, because then the teachers can then have the IEP, and that's an individual education plan or a 504 plan that teachers are supposed to follow. So I would do it as soon as you can.
If I could just add to that,
Yes.
too, I work for public school system, and so you're entitled to have that evaluation. I would ask for that. Most of your colleges expect or require you to have an evaluation, a recent evaluation within a year to 18 months if they're going to provide any accommodations.
Okay.
And almost all of your colleges now have something similar to Marshall's Health Center, where they will provide
A year
accommodations
to 18
and
months
tutoring.
prior to applying to the college?
Yes, or attending that
Or,
college.
okay.
And if you do it through the school system, it's free.
Right. The only thing with the school system is they won't use the word dyslexia, and so that's what we want.
They
They
also
will.
get
They will.
accommodations for the SAT and ACT and
Right,
SAT.
and you
got
need
to
to
get
be,
that.
and you have to have updated testing for
I
that.
know.
She helped me, that's all I can say.
Right. And in his case, high school actually submitted the paperwork incorrectly
Yes.
to get extended time, and we had to go back and get a correct decision, a correction.
So
for it.
you